fantastic performance from Nikola Vlašić. I couldn't help but watch that and think, my word, Moyes has timed this well. I mean, he's timed it really, really well. I don't know if it was meant to happen like this, but I sort of get the impression from the outside looking in that Moyes brought him in and then decided to take his time with him, fully in the knowledge that side Benrahma was going to go off to the African Cup of Nations and he's going to need a player to fill in for him and basically do the job that Benrahma does. It's very easy to look at that now and think, oh, that was the plan. Oh, look, hasn't it worked out? And it does look like it's worked out like that. I mean, it looks like the timing has been perfect. But if you rewind back, particularly at the start of it, you're thinking, well, hold on, we just signed this player for 28 million or whatever it was, and he can't get into the team, which creates a little bit of a worry. Now, you've got some evidence there, and the evidence is that Benrahma came in for 24, 25 million, something like that, initially on loan. But then we had to, if you remember in the last winter window, we had to make the deal permanent. The reason we had to make the deal permanent is because you're only allowed so many loan players. And to get in Jesse Lingard and or Dawson, we already had Dawson on loan. Basically, we had to make one of those permanent. We made Benrahma permanent so we could bring Lingard in. That's just what happened. But nonetheless, David Moyes was really dropping Benrahma into the team bit by bit, taking his time. So we had the evidence that he does this, but it still doesn't make it any easier, really, doesn't it? I think, as well, looking at it, I think you get blinded by the price tag. And as has been told a few times now, it's not 28 million. I think, actually, we paid something like 17 million. I think once he makes a certain number of appearances, once he scores a certain number of goals, if West Ham have certain league positions, if West Ham qualify for Europe this season, if we win the Europa League, I think if everything happens over the next 5 years, it becomes 28 million. But realistically, it's about 17 million. I reckon the transfer will end up being about 21 million, something like that. Which doesn't make it sound quite as bad, does it? Also, his wages are low. It's not like we're committing to paying him 30 million over the next few years, you know, so his wages are relatively low. That being said, the headline figure, which is 28 million, looks big, right? It does look big. I think the other thing where he has been maybe unfairly compared is with Lingard. So the story very much goes that we didn't get Lingard, couldn't bring Lingard in. That's okay, we'll bring Vlasic in instead. Now, David Moyes has never said this, it's just the rest of us joining the dots, but when you look at it, you think actually it doesn't make any sense at all. And the reason it doesn't make any sense at all is because Lingard, by and large, was deployed centrally by David Moyes. Basically, if Lingard had been playing in the game against Leeds in the Cup, Lingard would have been playing where Lanzini was. Lingard would have been playing where Vlasic was. Vlasic is more or less going to be deployed wide. Vlasic has played wide left a couple of times. In Europe, sometimes he's played wide right. I don't think Vlasic is Lingard's replacement in any way, shape or form. I think probably if Moyes had his way, playing both in the same team. But it doesn't matter because at the start people are thinking, who's this? He's a replacement for Jesse. He's not as good as Jesse. So I think he was probably unfairly compared, but not because of anything Moyes did there at all. And I think because of that, don't be surprised if Moyes continues to pursue not just Lingard, but somebody else in that position as well. In many respects, Lingard coming back in would probably be far more of a threat to Benrahma than he would be to Vlasic, because sometimes Benrahma sits in that pocket, sits in the middle, doesn't he? Before we talk about the performance that we just seen from Vlasic, I do want to go into it in a little bit of detail as well. It's just worth looking at the situation with Benrahma, and particularly if we look at the story that this thing has carried itself over from Vlasic coming in and taking his time and you know, Moyes bringing him in and dropping him out and that sort of thing. He's got to the point now where he's just played that well, but I think I can't wait to see him in the next game. Can't wait to see him against Norwich, and I'm sure you're all the same. If he has a really good month, and let's say a really good month, 6 weeks, not sure exactly how long Benrahma's away, if he carries on playing like that, then Benrahma's now is basically a substitute again. And I think that's quite significant as well. I understand I'm extrapolating and sort of predicting the future that might happen. But I think it's fair to say if Vlasic keeps up this level of performance, then Benrahma comes back. Benrahma's on the bench. And it's a bit of a shame for Benrahma because Benrahma had just really got back into the first team, hadn't he? And played well, got some assists, got some goals recently. But the biggest thing I can say about Vlasic there, and I said it in the review, but I'll just say it again. He reminded me of Jared Bowen. And that will be music to David Moyes' ears or eyes, whatever. David Moyes will be really, really pleased to see that. Because that's what he's going to want to see. He wants to see someone scrapping constantly. And don't get me wrong, he's really got some massive work rate out of Benrahma. Benrahma in the last, I can't remember which one it was, but the last game he played before he went to the African Cup of Nations, he got back and it was a Palace game. He was at left back position and blocked a cross from, I guess it was Elise, blocked a cross from Elise, which then went out for a corner to Palace, but he was back defending there. So it's not that Benrahma won't put in a shift. Clearly, he'll work hard. In fact, he's been doing it, if you remember, when we played Fulham last season, he conceded a penalty, didn't he, against Fulham, which the kid, was it Lukeman, tried to chip over. So, he's happy to get back and defend in the box, Benrahma. That's not it at all. But I'm just saying, you can understand why David Moyes is going to see the appeal in playing Vlasic, because he did not stop scrapping. It wasn't just the scrapping, it was the strength as well. And it was the ability and the willingness to go into physical duels, to actually think, I'm going to have a scrap with you. I'm going to go shoulder to shoulder with you and sort of try and scrap it out a little bit. That's really good because it makes him attritional. David Moyes loves attritional players. I love attritional players. I think I'm really, really pleased to see it. But I knew he had that. I knew he had that competitive side to him. I think my question was, did he have the quality? And the number of times in that game where he wriggled his way out of tight situations with quick feet, I was really, really pleased with. Showed really good, really sound technique. Also, he played 1-2s. He wasn't greedy. If he in places he needed to give it quickly, he'd give it quickly. And also, he linked up really, really well with Lanzini, which I always think is a hallmark of a good player. If you can play well with Lanzini, I think you're probably a good footballer. I always think Declan Rice plays well with Lanzini. I always say Benrahma and Lanzini link well. Vlasic linked well with Lanzini. You think, are you on that wavelength? Well, very much he was. I actually thought he should have scored and could have scored. The reason he didn't score was he was getting... I guess you could say it was good defending for when we scored the first goal that Lanzini scored. Ultimately, it might have been bad defending because it resulted in a goal. But Vlasic wanted to shoot earlier, and I was quite confident had he been allowed to shoot earlier, he would have scored. Now, obviously, he did take a shot, and the lad made a very, very good block. But I think he wanted to shoot sort of almost one stride before that. I love the way he wins free kicks, as Gio pointed out in the review. Looks really good, looks really competent at doing that. Clearly a popular guy as well in the squad. You can see it. They warm to him. There's a willingness. You can see the players willing him to do well. When Lanzini was brought off in that game, I was in no doubt at all Lanzini's been brought off to safeguard him for Norwich. Such was his performance. We'll talk about him in tomorrow's video, Lanzini. But to see Vlasic come off as well, I thought, there you go. Don't be disappointed. That means you're in for the next game. And of course, so he should be, and rightly so, he should be in for the next game. But I'm just really, really chuffed to see that. I was a little bit worried, I think, because he got so much right, hasn't he, really, Moyes, with the signings. When you look at Bowen, and when you look at Souček, and you look at Soufal and Dawson for the money, and you think, okay, is he going to get one wrong at some point? And I will admit, I did wonder, is Vlasic the one he's got wrong? Is this? But I tell you what, absolutely delighted. And, like the team and like Moyes, like everybody else, I'm wanting him to do well as well. I want him to do well. But it's perfectly timed. Absolutely perfectly timed. I didn't know what we were getting. I really didn't know. I didn't know much about him before he came in. There were times when I first read the report where I thought maybe he's a replacement for Jesse Lingard. There were times when people said, we can also play up front. So I wondered, before seeing him play, I also wondered, is this the guy that when Antonio is injured or being rested, maybe this guy plays up front? Now, having seen him, learnt a bit about him, no, he's a wide player. And I'm not saying he can't pop up centrally. He can and he will. But predominantly, he's not a reserve striker, support striker, or a number 10. This is a winger, and he's a bit of a scrappy-do winger as well. But as I say, the more I looked at him, I thought he's like Bowen. He is like Bowen. And that's great. That's great. Well, it's great news for West Ham. For defenders, not so good. Because with Bowen, with Vlasic on either wing, I tell you now, the fullbacks are just not going to get a moment's rest.